My name is Kathleen. I'm a master gardener and I confess to being a plantaholic. I like to hoard my plants. They require water. Unfortunately, with the drought, we kind of have to taper that stuff back a little bit. So what I'd like to do is to find out for all of you that are here today, why you're here. I mean, are you here to save water? Okay. Anybody here to save money? Yeah, the prices are going to go up and they're not going to go back down. How about time? Yeah, anybody here like to weed? Yes. We almost always. We've actually, like the last 4 classes, they've said, oh, okay, wait a minute. Okay. Usually someone says yes. I'm sorry, but if you switch to drip irrigation, you will have less of your favorite pastime. Okay. The cool thing about drip irrigation is if you're not throwing water everywhere, like all over these hills when the rain happens, you're not going to have weeds growing because weeds are going to germinate and grow where they get water. So like our hills all turn this lovely shade of green in the spring after the rain, well, that happens in your yard too. Any place that the water lands, you're likely to germinate weeds. So if you're only putting the water where it needs to go, less weeding. Okay? And as far as saving time, yeah, this stuff is awesome. Okay, there's a few things you do need to know about drip irrigation. One of them is your soil. Is anybody here from Ventura, Camarillo, Oxnard? Oh, well, you don't. She's a plant. In that area, they've got sandy soil, and so you can kind of see the pattern of how the water moves through it. It's like those hourglasses. That sand runs through those things really quickly, and it goes straight down. That's what happens with the water. The reason you want to know your soil is because if you have sandy soil, and you look at that picture, that's telling you you're going to water more often. You're going to have more emitters because it kind of doesn't go sideways. It kind of tends to go straight down. But if you live anywhere, Thousand Oaks, Moore Park, Simi, okay, we have clay. Clay can be a real pain to work with, but you know what? In a drought, it's awesome. Absolutely awesome. And I will tell you that drip irrigation and clay get along great. With drip irrigation and clay, that's the best way to water. The water is going to go sideways when you've got clay soil. It's going to move a little bit wider before it starts to move down, and it takes longer for it to move down. And gravity's not going to bring that water down. Everybody thinks, oh, well, gravity will bring it all the way down. No, it's kind of like water pushes water down. So applying the water slowly so that it can seep in and then go down is ideal for clay. I mean, and clay holds the moisture better. It's got nutrients. It's wonderful. It's a little hard to work with. I get it. But I'll take it any day of the week in a drought. The stuff in the middle is called loam. I always call this a unicorn. It does not exist in nature in the state of California unless somebody has done a lot of work for you in advance. If they have gone through and they've dug in all those amendments and something like that, you owe them a huge backbreaking debt of gratitude. Here, we don't have that, but we get to read about it. So there's another thing that you need to know when it comes to drip irrigation is you need to know what your plants want. Now we all get the plant and it's so cute when we go to pick it up, and it's got this little tag in it that tells you about it and what its water needs are and what its light needs are. Much like the pirate code, those are suggestions and guidelines, because the company that grew that plant for you so lovingly does not know how much sun you actually get, where the prevailing winds are, if it gets equal water to everything else. I mean, you could have 2 plants right next to each other and one's going to get a lot of water and one might get nothing. So those are just guidelines. So if it says moderate water, light water use, be aware that number one, that's once established, okay? Establishment takes a while, so it's not like you can take it, put it in, and a week later cut off its water because it said it was drought tolerant. You know, like our children, we don't take 3-year-olds and send them off to college. We have to work them up to it, so they have to be in the ground for a while. But when you look at what you've got in your yard, it pays to kind of know, okay, the wind's always going this way and that way in this area, but over here it's kind of sheltered. Well, in the sheltered area, the moisture is going to last a little longer. So you got to kind of engage the smart controller and work at figuring out what your plants are talking to you about in terms of what their needs are, okay? The next thing is prepare good plans. Is anybody taking everything out and starting over? Yeah, okay. That I will step aside and tell you that could be really risky right now, okay? Because I'm pretty sure they're going to cut the water off and September, October. So be aware of that and plan accordingly. In fact, they're saying with the turf rebates, they're talking about extending it and letting people take longer to put the plants back in. So just be aware. For most of us, the cool thing about being a gardener is you can change your mind. So we kind of take what we've got and we make some adjustments to it as we go along. It's like, okay, that plant worked, I'll plant another one. That one didn't. Or, gee, I want to put a path over here. Yeah, I want to take that path out. It's nice to have good plants, but sometimes we tend to go with the flow. The plan I want you to stick to is if you are converting existing risers, make a map. Every one of those risers is an asset that you can put to sleep or take back and bring back online to use again later. But if you've done something really neat and you've, capped them off and then you put mulch over it, it looks great, and then you're going back going, I need to find it. I know it's around here somewhere. Make a map. Cell phones are an amazing invention. Take a picture. Because if you just write on your little notes, oh, it's 4 feet away from that tree is going to continue to grow. And now you're looking 4 feet away, but it's actually closer to the tree. So that picture will remind you that tree was smaller back then or something else has changed, but it'll help guide you back to where that asset was. And I will tell you from experience, it's really annoying to have to go digging around and trying to find those things. So definitely take a picture, make a map, put it someplace. No, if you have automated sprinkler systems, those circuits where they run, part of it goes this way, part of it goes another, and it's all automated, you can use that. You want to use that. It makes our life easier. So make a map. Know, okay, on this circuit, it runs these, because you may be running the circuit over here, but you may have run your drip from here all the way over to there. Make a map. Keep track of what it is that you're doing, okay? And after that, apply best practices. Do the best you can. Do what you got to do. But you really want to save money and save time by not wasting your efforts, okay? Unfortunately, when it comes to drip irrigation, I do have some really bad news for you. There's a couple things that we can't change, and I'm really sorry, but it's manufacturer controlled, and we just have to learn to live with it. Pipe thread and hose thread. Have you ever taken the spaghetti sauce jar and you go to put the lid back on, the jelly jar, and it kind of goes on a little wonky? You don't quite line it up, and then it falls over in your refrigerator and it spills all over, and then you got to clean it up. Okay, that's kind of like putting pipe thread and hose thread together. Because if you put it on wonky and you can tighten down as much as you want, no matter what happens, it's always going to leak. You put pipe thread and hose thread together, I don't care how much of that Teflon tape you wrap around that, it's going to leak. They're not meant to go together, and you can crank on them all you want, it's still going to leak. So, first of all, Teflon tape, do not buy it, do not use it for drip applications. I don't care what they tell you, do not. Teflon tape breaks off in little itty bitty little pieces, and those little itty bitty little pieces get into these little itty bitty little holes and they clog them, and it's really annoying. You do not need Teflon tape. You do not need tools to crank parts together. You can do it with your hands, and if I can do it with these, y'all can do it, okay? So pipe thread and hose thread, there's some basic differences. I'm going to show you this briefly, and then I'm going to pass it out so you guys can play with it, so you get to see it up close. You just have to trust me in the meantime. Okay. You can kind of see one kind of has a longer nose than the other. Okay. Pipe thread tends to be a little longer. Hose thread, they tend to be a little shorter or stubbier. The other thing, you can kind of see this side looks a little thicker than this side does. The threads on hose thread, those peaks and valleys are a lot more aggressive. They're bigger. On pipe thread, they're a little bit smaller and they're closer together. Okay? You guys all know about the birds and the bees, right? I don't have to explain male parts and female parts. Thank you. Okay, so this is the male part. When it comes to the female parts, one of the ways to know whether or not you're looking at pipe thread or hose thread for this, because it's on the inside, it's kind of hard to tell, right? One generally quick, easy way is if it's hose thread, you should see a little gasket in there. See that black circle that's in there? That's a gasket. When you put hose thread parts together, you should always have a gasket in there. I say should, because sometimes you go to the big box store and you go to buy the part and you're looking at it and it doesn't have it. That's because somebody else needed another gasket And they kind of went to the big box store and took a look at it and went, oh, this really wants to go home with me. So be careful. If you're looking for a part and it does not have one of these little black circles seated in there, put it back. Don't take it, okay? Now, on the pipe thread side, courtesy of my daughter's pink nail polish, you see no gasket, okay? Gasket, right? No gasket. When you go to buy the part, you will not see pink back there. You will see just white, but it's one of the ways to know. What I like to do personally, I'll go pick up something like this when I'm walking through to pick my parts out, and I'll use it as a reference. Now, I make sure I put it back in the right box. Please do the same. But that way, in case you're not used to seeing the difference and recognizing it right away, just hold on to it, because one side is clearly hose, the other side is clearly pipe, and then you have a reference in your hand to help you walk through getting the rest of the parts, okay? When you put them together, and please do not crank on this, remember we do not need to use a lot of force. If you try and put the wrong parts together, and I'm going to pass this around, you've got two sides to play with, you're going to feel it kind of catch and then get kind of stuck like when you put that jar lid on incorrectly, okay? So your hands and the parts will talk to you if you're listening, okay? So just kind of get an idea of what it feels like. Do not crank on it. Here we go, and they're all marked. You want to start over here. So you guys can cheat and look inside. It's on the inside, and then you know from the gasket, no gasket. Okay. So that's something we can't do anything about. The next thing is the definition of a ½ inch. ½ inch is a ½ inch, right? Not when it comes to this. Okay. Something that we call poly hose or poly tubing. It's this big tubing here. This is your main feature in your drip irrigation. This is your freeway. This is how you're moving your product from the water source out to your plants. Most of what you're going to use, most of what most people use, is ½ inch. Unfortunately, ½ inch can be 0.62, 0.70, 0.71, and it's very frustrating because when it comes to putting the parts together, you use these connectors, and they're size specific. So if you try and use a connector from one size on another, it's either not going to go on or it's going to leak, no matter what you do. So what I suggest you do is when you go and you buy your poly tubing, it will, when it first comes to you, it'll be printed on the outside of the package and it'll be faintly printed on the actual tubing until it's been down on your ground for a while and then it kind of disappears. Put that information in your phone. You know, create a whole contact for your phone. Instead of a picture of a dog to represent that particular contact, put that picture of your map of where your risers are and then put in there that their phone number is 0.7 for the size of the tubing. Because you can go to a big box store and from the same manufacturer, you go to the same spot in the big box store and it's like, this is what I got last time, this is what I'm getting this time. You got the other stuff a week ago. You think everything's fine till you get home. Manufacturers make the different sizes. You don't know that the big box store is always going to get in the same size. And it can be excruciatingly frustrating when you get home to do your project and all of your connectors are one size and you just bought more tubing that's another. So definitely pay attention to what that is. There's nothing that we're going to be able to do to get them to change it. But for one thing, some gardeners somewhere got fed up enough that they said, I'm creating a universal connector. So thanks to these wonderful, innovative people, we now have products that look like this instead of like these compression ones here. And I'll talk more about this, so I'll fill you in more on this. These will fit any of those sizes, okay? They can handle all of them. It's kind of cool because the ones with the little wings are much easier on your hands to put together too. Still put this information in your phone because I will tell you from personal experience during COVID, you could not get universal connectors anywhere. If I didn't have the numbers, I couldn't have repaired the systems I needed to repair unless I knew what size of the compression couplings I needed. So keep that information with you. Speaking of these, I'm gonna have some fun. I'm assuming everybody has driven here or has been driven at some point in their life. Yes? Okay, quiz time. What kind of intersection is that? Just shout it on out. Come on. Ah, there we go. What kind of an intersection is that? Oh, come on. You guys are going to fail your DMV test. Come on. Thank you. And that? Just shout it on out. How about that one? Okay. You're in downtown LA and this part really sucks. What's one of those? Yeah. Then sometimes you're in downtown and you realize you've just run into a... Okay. You guys passed. You now know what most of this stuff is. Because I don't care what size it is. I don't care if it's the big, huge stuff they use in a residential, commercial application. I don't care if it's PVC. I don't care. What's that? T. Yeah. What's that? What's the itty bitty one? Wow. Okay, you guys are good at this. What's this one? Okay. You guys are great. You know what's really, really cool about drip irrigation? Is you can take the right turn only one and you can flip it around and use it for the left. And you don't even have to buy another spot, okay? You're good. This one, I didn't talk about this. This is like the freeway when you're going from the 101 to the 134 and you really haven't done anything. It's called a connector. That's where you just take two parts and put them together straight. Okay? So again, I don't care what size this stuff is. It's all the same. So not so scary, not so overwhelming anymore, is it? It's just stuff. And what's really cool is it's just plastic stuff and it's relatively inexpensive and easy to play with. And the worst thing that's going to happen is you might drown a plant or one might die of lack of water if you haven't done it properly, but this is easy stuff to play with. Now, I will tell you one thing I would like for you all before you go buying parts, go to a big box store and stare at that wall of parts. And when they come up to you and say, "Can I help you?" say, "No, thank you." Do not ask them any questions, please. Just see what they've got, okay? Then go to like a pro place. We've got Smith Pipe, we've got Aquaflow. There's an Aquaflow right here in Moore Park. There's a Smith Pipe in Thousand Oaks. Go there. You can ask your questions. They're gonna have a much smaller selection. They carry the mainstays. But if you wanna ask a question, ask it from them. Then if you really wanna play, go to a mid-box store. They're the ones that have all the toys and gadgets that can do anything you want. You know what's really cool? See this little one? Looks like a little rainbird, right? This little sucker will throw water 15 feet on a drip irrigation system. 15 feet. You can take that little path, you know, where you never quite got the water squared away and you wanted something to grow in that one little narrow path. Here's your answer. It can do misting. It can create, I was talking about, you can put it to where you've set up a little hummingbird shower. You can mist your plants. You can take care of the humidity in a greenhouse. You can create a microclimate. I can grow an azalea next to lavender because I can play with this stuff, all right? Incredible versatility, and it's relatively inexpensive, and you do not need a plumber to do it. You don't have to dig it in. You can leave it on the surface, or you can dig it in if you really want to. I'm lazy. I vote for the not dig it in part, okay? So what we're gonna cover next is actually putting a system together. And we are gonna do it using a hose bib as our example today. Cool thing is, whatever we build in terms of this, if you wanted to put this on your sprinkler system, you could put a little elbow piece on your riser. You would attach it right there, and this would be on the ground. The same thing will work, okay? I will show you some other more elegant options also, but just know that everything we're showing you is all the basics that you need to build any kind of system you want, okay? We will start with this. This is our hose bib. Notice, pipe thread and hose thread, right? Okay, so this is gonna be attached to your water source. This is what we're gonna work with. When it comes to gardening, we kind of like to have choices. There's these cool little toys that make it to where you've got more choices. Now, when you hear the word manifold in relation to your car, it's a little scary because it usually means it's a lot of money. When it comes to this, all that manifold really means is it's one pipe to many, okay? So you could take that one hose bib and you can get multiple options out of it. So if you want to run your drip irrigation off of one side and still have a hose on the other, you can do that. You can make this as big and convoluted as you want and as much as your brain can handle. It's amazing what you can do with one hose bib, okay? But since this is our introductory class, we're telling you about this, and we're going to start with just one system. So you're going to go from this. You're going to choose to split. I highly recommend it because I do like using a regular hose. It's very simple. This, you know, it's hose thread because there's a little black gasket in there, and you're going to screw it on. Okay? Simple, right? You don't need tools. You don't need to crank on it. Please don't. If you crank on plastic parts, an interesting thing happens. You think you're tightening it all in, you're actually kind of breaking it. Get it good and snug. That's all it needs. After that, you could actually create a leak problem. Okay? So hand tight, you know, good and hand tight, but you should be able to manage it with just that. There's one thing that you do need to have for your system when it comes to irrigation, and that's called the backflow preventer. There's different ones you could buy. You can get a plastic one. Do notice there's an arrow that says flow, right? That tells you it's a one-way street. If you put something like this in backwards, you're going to have a problem. Water's not going to flow, sort of like having an accident in the middle of it. The kind I prefer, and these things are only a couple bucks, I prefer the brass. It also has an arrow, which is clearly marked, not when you go to buy it. Again, that's my daughter's nail polish. But this is a one-way only thing. When you put it onto your hose bib, it's kind of cool. There's a little screw. You can tighten it down to where it's not going to come back off your hose bib. If you're going to put in any kind of an irrigation system, this is required by code because our water that's coming out of our pipes is all potable water, all drinkable water. If you go and you are out there using your Miracle Grow or whatever, and you just turn your water off, some of what's in your hose is going to be sucked back up into the line. If you are out just with your hose with nothing on it and you drop it down in your nicely organic lawn, backyard, whatever, and Fido's been there helping you with organic fertilizer, it's going to come back up. You want that in your drinking system? I mean, I'm all for natural, but come on. So this is required by code. I put them on each one of my hose bibs and I just leave it there, okay? They are only a couple of bucks, and I will tell you it's a pain to sit there and move them from bib to bib to bib. So just put one on each one. You only need one. Leave it there, okay? Anybody have those hoses that do that thing where you turn it off and it like all scooches up? Have you ever seen those? Okay. Have you looked at it and seen how much water continues to come out of the hose even after you've shut it off? Okay. That's water that could be pushed back up into your system. With a regular hose, and you put this on here, you turn off your water, and even if you leave your nozzle open, you're going to be surprised how much water comes shooting out of this. You'll see it when you guys go to do the hands-on. There's little holes drilled all the way around here. All the water that's going to come shooting out of here would have gone back into your drinking water system. By the way, I highly recommend you put your mint plant right underneath so it gets all that lovely water. But you're really going to be surprised when you see how much water would have been going back into your system, okay? So that usually is the first thing that goes out before you start to build your system. The only time this wouldn't come first is if you're using a hose bib timer. Now this is really cool. We're used to seeing the timers for our regular irrigation, our regular sprinkler systems. You can do this for a hose. It can be electric, it can be battery operated, it can be solar, it can be mechanical. We use these in class. They're about, well, I used to say 45. Are they up to 49? Is that? 45 still. They're still 45? Okay. They run on a 9-volt battery. You only have to change the battery. I recommend you change it twice a year because corroding batteries is bad. So when you change your clocks, change the battery. Please do not use a battery from the less than $1 store. Use a good battery, okay? The reason I say put your backflow preventer second if you have this is because even though this is designed to handle water, a lot of water constantly being showered on electronics. Water and electronics kind of don't get along after a while, and it will cause this to fail faster, okay? This will last years, years and years and years. But if you're constantly bombarding it with water, it's going to shorten its lifespan. So if you're using a timer, please put this afterwards and you will be much happier. The part that comes next, it used to come in 2 pieces. Well, actually, we've got a adapter. I lied. We're going to put an adapter first because remember how we talked about male and female parts? And in this particular case, they would not be too compatible because they're not going to go together. Okay? So they make these adapter parts or couplers that allow you to go from pipe thread to hose thread, from pipe thread to pipe thread, whatever it is you need. Okay? This one is brass. I really like the ones that swivel. What I passed out to you guys, it's swiveled. It's great because if you have to do any maintenance on the system that involves taking this part of it out of the rest of it where it's all connected to the hoses, it's really hard to unscrew something when everything is going way out to this big hose that's stapled down and everything else, and you look a bit like an idiot when you're out there going like this, trying to get it to untwist as you're trying to get it off, okay? The neighbor's kid will videotape it, they will put it on YouTube. So what's really cool is this allows you to isolate the part you need to remove. So wherever possible, if you can get the ones that swivel, awesome. Highly recommend it. Makes life much easier. Okay, so once you've put the 2 parts together, would like for you to notice there is a one-way arrow. So if we put it the wrong way, water going this way, not a good idea. This is a one-way street. And when you go to buy this, you will not see the lovely pink arrow. It will be black and difficult to see. So sometimes you have to look at the parts and kind of check them out, sort of like reading the instructions on a lot of things, which a lot of us don't tend to read the instructions, but in this particular case, look and see if you're having a problem with your system. Is it a one-way? Is there an arrow in there somewhere that I missed that I need to flip my part around? Okay, so pay attention to it. This is a pressure reducing filter. It used to be you bought a pressure reducer and a filter. Now they combine 2 in 1. This is where some of your maintenance for your system is going to come into play. There is some maintenance that's required. One of the things is, even though we have incredibly clean water and we are very lucky to have it, if your neighbor up the street has a line break and they have to dig it out and they go to replace it, that's great, but something can enter into their pipe and move downstream and get you. Little bits of sand, little bits of shells, you know, the things like, have you ever taken the aerator out of your sink faucet and looked at it and cleaned it out? There's stuff in there. That little grain of sand could kill one of your itty bitty little emitter holes. So you do want the filter. And what's cool is see how I'm just kind of unscrewing this. I don't even have to take it off the system. Inside is our lovely little filter. Okay, you take it out, you hose it out, you put it back in. You can go back to your significant other and say, oh man, I just spent the day maintaining the drip irrigation system. I'm beat. Okay, I deserve to be pampered after this. Sure, go for it. But that's all it takes to maintain this part. Now, as far as the pressure reducing part, it's essential. I don't know if any of you have ever done drip irrigation before and you turn it on and the little emitters go pew, and then you got little waterfalls going. Too much pressure, okay? And trying to adjust your pressure back here, or worse yet, on one of the globe valves of the sprinkler system that you've adapted, just partially closing that gate is not the way to consistently reduce pressure. You need something that's going to control it consistently. So, wonderful things, all in one part, easy to use. The next thing we need to do is to somehow go from this to this. Kind of doesn't work, so we put an adapter on, or converter, or whatever you want to call it. In this case, this is sort of like a one side of one of those universal lock nut things, right? And I can attach my poly tubing to that. But I've still got that problem of parts that won't go together. So I used a different type of a coupler. This one's just from the PVC department. I just screw that on there, and I'm good to go. There are parts that you can get that are specifically made to do that. Something like this, where it screws on and it also has the connector to put the poly tubing onto it. It just depends upon the parts you buy and what that store has available. One of the things that I recommend you do is, as you're going through the store, I like to build what it is I'm going to buy. That way I make sure when I leave the store, I have all the parts. I'm not going to be doing it. Charlene was the one that said the most important piece of equipment is a full tank of gas. Well, the price of gas right now, I kind of don't want to go there. So I like to do something like this. And when I walk up to the cashier, number one, I just hand him a thing. And I know I have all the parts that I need to put one of these things together. Okay, and they're all the right parts because they all went together properly. And if I needed pipe thread or hose thread, I can make my adjustments there as opposed to when I get home and find out, oh, crud. And Kathleen told me not to do this, but I don't want to go back to the store. Build it while you're in the store. You'll save yourself a lot of time. Okay, there's one other really, really important piece of equipment, and that's stakes. There are several kinds. I like to just get a bunch of these. They're pretty heavy duty. They used to be about 10 cents a piece. I think it doubled. But this isn't just a stake to keep your tubes nice and neat and underneath the mulch and make everything look pretty. This is actually safety gear. You need this because after you've put it underneath the mulch and it all looks nice and neat and you go walking along and you do one of those, you do not want to fall into the rosebush. It really sucks. The rosebush doesn't like it either. Buy a bunch. Then double the amount you're buying and then double it again. You're going to need a lot of these. Okay? It's wonderful because it does keep your system nice and tight and neat to the ground, and it does prevent people from falling. But it's really important to prevent people from falling because the person that's most likely to fall is you. And I don't care how much money you save, it's not worth a busted hip. Okay? Rosebush was bad enough. It could have been a lot worse. Okay? Buy a lot of these. Okay, let me see. Did I forget anything? I don't think so. Okay. When it comes to the polytubing, give me just a sec, Kevin. You can get it in lots of different colors. You can get it in white, you can get it in brown, you can get it black, you can get it in green, you can get it in clear. I do not recommend using clear because algae will grow in it. It will look really gross really quickly. But clear in the little stuff, when you're winding it down a chain into a plant, that's nice. The other cool thing is you can paint it. You don't have to paint it. It's not like PVC. Exposed PVC should be painted or covered. This can handle the UV. But if you want to change the color of it because it's up against a fence and you don't want to see it, you can spray paint it. Go ahead. Cool thing is some of this stuff comes with emitters embedded in it. And depending upon your soil needs, remember how we were talking about sand, you needed lots of emitters close together. Clay, you could put them further apart. You can buy the tubing with the embedded emitters at different spacings. And it's really nice. If you're doing an orchard, we recommend you just get the embedded emitters, run up one side, run back down the other, you're done. Okay? They make the little micro tubing. This is the 1/4 inch. This is sort of like, okay, this is your freeway, all right? These little connectors are your off ramps. These are your streets. These are your destinations, okay? Just think of it like driving. You can get this as straight tubing. You can also get it with embedded emitters in it. Again, at different measurements. You'll know the difference because it kind of looks like a snake that's eating lunch. It's got a little bit of a bulge in it, okay? Pay attention when you're buying your stuff at the store that you're grabbing the tubing that you want. Because a lot of them, for a while, it was only the brown tubing had the embedded emitters. That's not true, okay? Make sure when you grab the container or the packaging, it usually comes in a big roll, look and see if it says embedded emitters or emitters are in it, or if it's just straight tubing. So pay attention to that, okay? All right, we are going to, oh, no, I lied. One more thing. All that stuff that I just showed you, there are innovations that are being made. You can build this. You can also just buy something like this. That's your backflow preventer. There's a filter and a pressure reducer in that, and that's your connector to your polytubing. Pretty easy to do. I still recommend you put a swivel thing in there, but it's getting simpler and simpler all the time to be able to put these systems together. They even have this one, although I'm not a real fan of it. You just screw it in and you pop it and you go. It's a little more difficult to maintain. You do want something where you can access that filter. But if you really want something simple, you can get these. It's very easy to put these systems together, and they are making advances all the time. So there's really no excuse to move to it. And they will talk to you at the coach boxes where you guys are going to go and put stuff together, and we will show you the incredible things they have for converting risers now for drip irrigation. Did I miss anything? Nope. Okay. This is Kevin. He is our hostess for the evening.
Yeah, Kathleen.
I know, I'm going to pay for that. We're going to split you guys up into groups. I would say if you are here as a couple, as a partner group, 2 people working on the same project, split up. I'm not saying it to be mean, but you're going to get different perspectives because every time we do this, we forget something. And I'm dependent upon them to pick up where I screwed up. If you have 2 people with 2 different coaches, you're going to get different perspectives and different information, and what really makes sense from one person's description, the other person might not get. So even though it sounds really, really mean, split up. You're going to get the best result that way.